It is 2 a.m. You are sitting alone in the dark. The silence in your room feels heavy, almost suffocating. You are staring at the glowing screen of your phone, desperately hoping for a notification, a text, any microscopic signal that someone remembers you exist. When the screen remains black, a profound, crushing ache drops directly into your chest. Society tells you that you are just feeling sad. They tell you it is just a phase, that you just need to distract yourself, watch a movie, or try to be more positive. But society is fundamentally misunderstanding the dark architecture of your own mind. What you are experiencing right now is not a negative emotion. It is a violent, biological emergency. If you're into understanding how your mind actually works, subscribe now. Because if you leave without doing it, you'll probably never see this again and miss insights that could change how you see yourself. To understand the brutal mechanics of your loneliness, we have to completely dismantle the way you view your own suffering. We must travel back millions of years. For your prehistoric ancestors, isolation was not a minor social inconvenience. It was an absolute, guaranteed death sentence. If you were separated from the safety of the tribe, you would freeze in the dark, starve, or be hunted by predators. Therefore, to keep you alive, your primitive nervous system evolved a terrifying, highly efficient alarm system. It designed a physical punishment to prevent you from ever wandering off alone. That alarm system is the severe, agonizing pain of loneliness. When you feel lonely today, your brain does not know that you are physically safe inside a locked, modern apartment. Your biology cannot tell the difference between being left on read and being abandoned in the prehistoric wilderness. It registers an immediate mortal threat to your life. The moment that feeling hits, the amygdala, the primitive, hypervigilant fear center of your brain, violently activates. It sounds the alarm. It releases a massive, overwhelming flood of stress hormones into your bloodstream. Your body physically prepares for a war that does not exist. But here is the most sinister, deeply destructive part of this biological response. The brain is a machine with a limited energy supply. To fund this massive emergency protocol, the amygdala must steal power from another part of your brain. It actively, aggressively hijacks the energy supply from your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is the absolute seat of your intelligence. It is the logical CEO of your mind. It is responsible for complex reasoning, impulse control, emotional regulation, nuance, and long-term planning. It is the specific part of the brain that makes you a sophisticated, rational human being. But when the amygdala detects the threat of isolation, the prefrontal cortex is forcefully shut down. Your brain literally bankrupts your highest mental faculties to prioritize immediate primitive survival. Your intelligence physically drops. When your prefrontal cortex is starved of its resources, your cognitive bandwidth shrinks to almost nothing. You literally lose the biological ability to solve complex problems. Your focus completely shatters. You can no longer process nuance or context. Everything in your life suddenly becomes black and white. People are either entirely with you or completely against you. You are operating on degraded, broken neurological software. Loneliness is not just breaking your heart, it is actively, measurably degrading your mind. This is the neurological tax of isolation. When the conscious, logical mind is forced offline, something else takes the wheel. In depth psychology, Carl Jung called this the shadow. The shadow is the dark, repressed, primitive part of your psyche that operates purely on fear and base survival. When your intelligence drops, your shadow begins to drive your behavior. This massive cognitive drop explains the chaotic, deeply destructive behaviors you exhibit when you are isolated. It explains why you suddenly text that toxic ex at 3 a.m., fully knowing it will end in disaster. It explains why you make impulsive financial decisions, why you binge eat until you feel sick, or why you intentionally self-sabotage your own progress. You look back at these actions and you hate yourself. You think you are stupid. You think you are inherently weak. But you are not weak. You are making these choices because the logical, intelligent part of your brain has been taken hostage by a terrified, prehistoric animal that genuinely thinks it is about to die in the dark. Your starved brain is desperately scanning the environment, looking for any form of connection, any signal that you are not alone. But in the modern world, this survival mechanism completely misfires. Instead of seeking genuine, vulnerable human connection, you seek the cheapest, fastest synthetic substitute available. You plunge headfirst into the infinite, paralyzing scroll of social media. You spend hours watching strangers live their heavily filtered fake lives. You are feeding your starving nervous system tiny, empty crumbs of artificial dopamine. But your biology is incredibly ancient, and it is not easily fooled. It knows the profound difference between the cold light of a glowing screen and the warmth and safety of a real physical tribe. The social media scroll does not turn off the biological alarm. It just anesthetizes the pain for a few seconds, while massively amplifying the underlying isolation. You are drinking salt water to cure your thirst. Because your amygdala remains active, you soon become trapped in a terrifying, invisible, self-fulfilling prophecy. The longer you remain lonely, the more hyper-vigilant your primitive brain becomes. Your compromised prefrontal cortex can no longer read social cues accurately. You begin to interpret completely neutral facial expressions as actively hostile. A delayed text message is no longer just a busy friend. It is undeniable proof of your own worthlessness. You become highly defensive. You become deeply cynical. You become hypersensitive to the absolute slightest microscopic sign of rejection. Your brain, in a desperate, misguided attempt to protect you from further emotional pain, begins to actively push people away. You isolate yourself even more to avoid the risk of being hurt. The very biological mechanism that was designed to save your life is now the exact thing destroying it. You have built a psychological prison, locked yourself inside, and handed the key to your own fear. So, how do you escape this invisible architecture? How do you stop the neurological bleeding and turn the lights back on in your prefrontal cortex? You must aggressively stop trying to run away from the feeling of loneliness and start observing the cold, mechanical reality of your own panic. The brutal truth is that you cannot force genuine human connection. You cannot instantly summon a tribe out of thin air. But you have absolute, total control over your biological response to the silence. The next time the crushing weight of isolation hits you and that familiar burning panic rises in your chest, do not reach for your phone. Do not look for a cheap, synthetic distraction. Stop moving. Sit perfectly still in the agonizing, deafening quiet. Acknowledge the loud, prehistoric alarm ringing inside your head. Look at the fear not as a reflection of your worth, but as a glitch in your biology. Say to yourself, I am not in physical danger. This is a primitive biological response. My brain is trying to survive a threat that does not exist. By naming the fear, by analyzing it with cold, hard logic, you forcefully demand that your brain wake up. You manually reroute the blood flow back to your prefrontal cortex. You override the amygdala. You prove to your nervous system that you can survive the silence without panicking. You must radically accept your solitude. You must transform the absolute terror of isolation into the quiet, unshakable power of solitude. Stop viewing being alone as a punishment or a measure of your unlovability. Start viewing it as a fortress for deep, uninterrupted mental focus. Reclaim your intelligence. Regulate your nervous system. Silence the prehistoric alarm. The war is inside your head. Now begin. If this felt uncomfortably accurate, you already know why you should stay. Subscribe to keep decoding the invisible systems running your life.